All right, welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and being with us. As we said before, we're going to be chatting this morning about gender-based violence. But this morning particularly, I want to talk about equality, respect, and responsibility. And to help me do that, I want to welcome Dr. David Mohammed of the Black Agenda Project organization. He's the director and founder. Good morning, Dr. Mohammed.
Good morning and greetings to all of your viewers and listeners.
Thank you for joining us this morning. This morning,
My pleasure.
I want us to see if we can examine the role of men in society as both, a protector and a perpetrator. Because we've been talking for the past few mornings on how this now, well, not just the narrative has to change, but the action has to change as well.
Yeah.
So tell me firstly, what do you see the role of men in society as?
Well, my view is likely to be considered somewhat traditional in that, especially as a Muslim, I see the role of men in society as that of father, husband, brother, provider, protector, and maintainer. I believe in the specifically designated responsibility of men as the provider on terms of ensuring that there is the general food, clothing, and shelter needs, and in particular security needs. And within our current society, based on patterned sociological trends, that the man has the added responsibility of being a visible role model and mentor to offer guidance to young children based on the imbalances that we see through single parent and visiting union homes with the open absence of many of our men. So in today's society, there's the added role of having to set an example and also to offer encouragement, motivation, and inspiration to youth in general, but to the males in particular.
That sounds like a lot. It's a lot of roles that men have to take on. I wonder if we are aware of who is responsible now for making sure that men are in a position where they can do all these things, where they can be the protector, where they can be the provider.
Well, I don't see what I've said as really a lot of roles. Really, it's a combination of these various categories of which are under one heading of what it means to be a man. It's not necessarily a list of individual tasks, but it's all, one individual who has the capacity based on his history and, other factors that we need to step up to the plate in this day and time to mend a lot of the wounds that are currently taking place. I mean, absentee fathers is probably one of, if not the most consequential factor as it pertains to some of the other spiraling problems that we're seeing, such as gang membership, the negative peer group influences, and again, the absence of a male mentor or role model to emulate and look up to actually be inspired to be like. That is something that's missing in our community today, at least from my vantage point.
What do you think contributes to that whole fathers not being there?
Well, we live in a peculiar time. There has always been gender bias against women, and there still is. But the way that gender bias has been handled now compared to 100 years ago, when the gender bias against girls was a lot more evident, it wasn't really considered to be a problem back then. And now all of the attention is on the young boys. So, for example, girls on the primary school level are outperforming boys. On average, out of the top 200 students in SEA, you have sometimes between 65 and 80% of the top being girls.
Right.
Then on the secondary level, you also have girls outperforming boys. And then on the university level, by far, I did the feature address for graduation for UWI Roy Tech about 3 years ago. And out of approximately 600 graduates, in my estimation, about 500 were females,
Wow.
100 males. Now, when you look over to the prisons, for example, I
Mm.
also do work in the prisons from time to time. The current prison population is approximately 5,000 men, but I also addressed the entire women's prison a couple of years back as well, and the entire population was 100 women. So it appears that there is a dreadful imbalance, of course, in the achievements and accomplishments, educationally speaking, of males and females. But when you look at it, 100 years ago, according to Jamaican sociologist Errol Miller, there has been what is described as the feminization of the teaching profession, where 100 years ago, most of the primary school teachers were men.
Right.
As a matter of fact, almost 90%. 100 years later, it is almost the reverse. Most of the primary school teachers are women. Most of the secondary schools are more of a balance. But these patterns, when you look at that, coming out of the home as well, so many fathers are not there, and the women have consistently been available as the desirable types of role models for the young girls. When the man is absent, and this combined with broken homes, dysfunctional families, faulty parenting, negative peer group influences, and educational underachievement,
Mm-hmm.
the gang member becomes the father figure. And in many instances, he is not in a position to offer the kind of guidance that is required for a young man. So it is all of these sociological factors that have come into play to create this new challenge that many males see themselves in.
How do we begin to fix what we see as these challenges?
Well, of course, there are a number of different strategies for that, but the most identifiable problem at this stage, at least from my vantage point, is that, and I've been saying this even before the recent spike in cases of violence against women, that something is happening to young men. There is a new insecurity
Mm.
within many young men whereby this is translating into a form of aggression, which is combined with a very toxic low self-esteem and lack of self-confidence, where we're getting many reports these days that men are trying to instruct their women to not speak to persons whom they feel intimidated by, not to be in the company of other males who are platonic friends. There was even a case that came to us, which is so dreadfully unfortunate, about a young girl who had become part of a tertiary level educational institution and was inspired to achieve and accomplish as much as she could. And she had a boyfriend who, of course, was not of the same way inclined. And through his fears of possibly eventually losing his relationship with her, he burnt her school books and threatened her to stay away from the educational institution. Now, he sees himself as beneath, and he sees also the means to preserve and protect the stability of his relationship, not by improving himself and lifting himself up,
But by
but
keeping her
by
down.
pulling her down and
Wow.
pulling her back. And then again, you hear all of these stories about men taking their girlfriend's cell phones and looking through it and calling other male names that they see on the list of contacts. So it's a kind of insecurity that's manifesting itself as a result of the upward social mobility of females. That graduation that I spoke of, that was for courses in business, leadership, administration, and supervision. So if those trends currently continue, it won't be too long until eventually within our corporate sector, the leadership will be mainly female. So the solution to that is definitely not to be an impediment or a barrier or an obstacle against the success and accomplishments of women, but men must be, we have to repair that after effect of slavery, where the black man in particular was used as a tool or an instrument of labor and also as a stud horse to breed more slaves for the slave economy and the plantation estate. And then not ever really addressing that historically or sociologically. So it has been left largely unattended. So
Okay.
we, at one time, the Nation of Islam, under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, whom I represent, we had started a series of men-only meetings after what the legacy of the Million Man March had left, because Minister Farrakhan was doing these men-only meetings addressing tens of thousands of men across the United States.
Right.
And there are so many forums that are necessary for us to come together and have these kinds of discussions, but also mentorship programs where we can demonstrate and set in motion the kinds of philosophies and ideologies that are required for men to reform.
I agree 100%.
These challenges.
And I know that we have some of these projects that have already begun and they will continue, just like this conversation will continue. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed, for joining us this morning and for sharing the knowledge and the information with us. And we'll continue to discuss it and to hash it out and to see how we can move forward together to make a better society, yeah?
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue discussing gender-based violence. Of course, that was Dr. David Mohammed of the Black Agenda Project Organization. He's the director and the founder. When we come back, we'll be chatting with Ashley Burnett. So stay tuned.